Hello everyone, tonight we journey into a world of chandeliers and secrets, where powdered wigs mask thinning hair, and every smile hides a ledger of debts and favors. You're in Paris, but not the postcard kind. It's the late 1700s. The air smells of rose water and chamber pots. Horse hooves clatter on cobblestones slick with, well, let's call it city runoff. You tiptoe past street vendors' nobles and pickpockets weaving through a city where candlelight flatters but never reveals too much. You're not a noble. You're not quite a servant. But tonight, you're something both worshipped and discarded, a courtesan in the making. And spoiler alert, the perfumes won't save you. In fact, they might slowly kill you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, why not let me know your city and local time? Always love seeing where our little sleep circle is drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're 16, maybe 17, your age is slippery in this era. Too young for wrinkles, too old for innocence. You live in a cramped apartment above a bakery in Le Marais, one of the livelier quartiers of Paris. Your mother, once a washerwoman, has been coughing more than usual. Your father, a mystery man, even the neighbors don't ask about anymore. But down on the street, the world is decadent. Ladies in wide pannier skirts and gentlemen in gold-threaded coats sweep past your doorstep like living paintings. You stare at them as they glide by, powdered like ghosts, laughing behind lace fans. They don't notice you. Not yet. You catch on quickly, though. Pretty girls don't stay invisible for long in Paris. You start by running errands for the dressmaker across the street, Madame Lucette, whose clients have names like de something or other, and always smell faintly of musk and danger. She teaches you about fabric and flirtation in equal parts. You don't sell the dress, she tells you one evening, pressing a half-finished bodice against your chest. You sell the fantasy, the escape. And Paris, in this time, is obsessed with escape. The poor want to escape hunger. The rich want to escape boredom. And men want to escape their wives, mostly. A baron spots you in the reflection of a boutique window. He sees the curve of your shoulder beneath a borrowed shawl and invites you to supper his coach, glistening with rain, his valet already helping you in before you can decline. You don't say no. You say nothing because you've been taught silence is safer than resistance, especially when the hand offering the ride wears 3 rings and owns 5 estates. Historians still argue whether young women like you were seduced or coerced by the glittering promises of Paris's elite. The truth, like most powdered cheeks, is somewhere in between. That night you eat more food than you've seen in a week. Oysters, truffled duck, a custard so sweet it numbs your tongue. The baron doesn't ask about your age. He doesn't ask about your family. He calls you my dove and slips a ring into your lap before you leave. You don't know it yet, but that tiny diamond, it's worth more than your mother's entire year's wages and cursed with the expectation of return visits. You learn to smile on cue, to laugh when you're confused, to sip the wine but never drain the glass. You master the fine art of distraction. Because one wrong glance, too bold, too soft, and you become a conquest, not a guest. Paris teaches you quickly that beauty is both currency and trap. You begin to rise. Other men notice, other girls notice. You're given lotions made from crushed pearls, your cheeks kissed pink with rouge made of carmine beetles. Your skin glows, but you don't know. The glow comes from the lead, seeping slowly into your bloodstream. Powder masks the fevers. Rouge hides the pallor. But inside, your organs are waging a quiet rebellion. No one warns you. or maybe they do, but in riddles. Beauty, one elder courtesan murmurs in a perfumed garden, is a kind of illness we all pretend is divine. Quirky fact courtesans in this era often used belladonna drops to dilate their pupils, believing wide eyes were more seductive. The problem: belladonna is toxic. It causes hallucinations, blurred vision, and in larger doses, death. You start to see the world a little fuzzier. Or maybe it's just the candlelight playing tricks. Or maybe it's the slow poison of Paris working its way into your bones. You're still a marvel. Men gift you silks, brooches, a necklace made from coral supposedly stolen from the neck of a Neapolitan duchess. You wear it once and get a rash that never quite goes away. Every night you go home and clean your face until it stings. You count your coins. You kiss your mother goodnight. You whisper that you're doing this for her. But Paris never really lets you do it for anyone else. Because now you're being watched not just by admirers, but by rivals. And in the city of love, envy is a much sharper blade than affection. You wake to the sound of carriages rattling down the Rue du Temple, their wheels splashing rainwater onto the cobbled stones below. The smell of roasted chestnuts and human waste wafts in through the shutters. Paris doesn't do mornings gently. You rise bones aching despite your youth and begin the delicate ritual of becoming someone else. The transformation is slow practiced. A layer of white lead paste to even your skin. A dusting of rice powder to catch the candlelight. Rouge for the cheeks. A tiny patch mouches de beauté in the shape of a crescent moon pressed just above your lip. Each mark has a message. One by the eye means you're passionate. On the corner of your mouth, discreet. Place it wrong, and you might accidentally declare yourself scandalous. But you already are, aren't you? You've become desired, which means in this city you've also become owned. The Baron isn't your only patron now. He was merely the first. There's a merchant with gold teeth and a belly like a bakery oven. A playwright who calls you his muse but forgets your name. A young noble barely older than you who swears he'll run away with you. He won't. They don't pay in money always. Sometimes it's gowns. Sometimes it's gossip. Sometimes it's the promise of introductions, more men, better men. One promises to commission your portrait. You spend 3 afternoons in a painter's freezing garret, holding the same smile until your jaw cramps. You are art, but not for preservation. You are decoration meant to be admired, not remembered. Historians still argue whether the courtesan's world offered liberation or just a different kind of prison. After all, you have fine clothes and better food than the seamstress's daughter next door. But you also carry invisible chains, ones made of silk expectation and silence. Your world is corseted both literally and figuratively. You learn not to eat before appearances. No one wants to see a swollen belly beneath, stays laced within an inch of breath. You pretend to enjoy the endless compliments, the way men examine you, like wine swirling, sniffing tasting with their eyes. You've become a connoisseur of being consumed. Your mother begins asking questions. Not directly, just hints. Who sent the ham, she asks, dicing it for soup. A friend, you murmur? You have good friends, she says softly, not meeting your eyes. And you do. Friends with benefits. For them, anyway. Madame Lucette warns you too. Not in words, in glances. In the way she stops offering you errands and starts sending you home earlier. She sees the change in your posture, the new pearls in your ears. She knows the look of a girl who's no longer playing dress-up. You've crossed the threshold. The city has noticed. You begin receiving invitations, not to salons or balls, not yet, but to petites réunions hosted by women who live in shadowy splendor. Madame Belvoir is one. She lives in an apartment above a bookshop, surrounded by velvet drapes, Persian cats, and rumor. No one knows exactly how old she is, but she's always draped in jewels and smells like overripe oranges. She sizes you up like a butcher examines veal. You'll do, she says. But smile less. Smiling too much makes them think you're cheap. From Belvoir, you learn the deeper game, the small signals, the pause before entering a room, the way to tilt your head to suggest mystery. She teaches you how to read men's silences as well as their boasts. Most of them, she says, are lonely children wearing wigs. One evening, after a party that smells of cognac and desperation, you meet her in the hallway. She's removing her earrings, and her earlobes are raw from years of being pulled by gold. "Don't stay too long in this life," she murmurs, voice hoarse. The glitter hides the trap. You don't know it yet, but Belvoir once had a sister. Died young, mercury poisoning. She'd used a popular salve to lighten her skin. The cream made her glow. Then it made her teeth fall out. You begin to understand the most dangerous things in your world come disguised as elegance. Quirky fact, many 18th century women applied ceruse, a white lead-based paste, directly onto their faces, believing paleness meant nobility. Over time, it caused muscle paralysis, tooth decay, and even death. But it also made you look fashionably frail, the look of someone who doesn't lift laundry or walk far enough to tan. So you apply it too. Because in your world, survival means submission to illusion. One afternoon, you walk by a group of boys playing in the mud. One shouts "Putain" and points to your shoes. You look down. They're so clean they shine utterly out of place. For a moment, you miss the dirt, the safety of obscurity. But then a coach stops. A hand waves from the window. You smile and step in, because what else is there now? You're not a seamstress's daughter anymore. You're something else entirely. You begin each day in front of a mirror, but the girl in the reflection gets harder to recognize. Her cheeks are too smooth, her eyes too large, her smile rehearsed to the point of vanishing sincerity. She is perfect, but not quite human anymore. Because this morning ritual isn't vanity, it's war. You line your eyes with kohl that makes them sting. You dab scent behind your ears, ambergris, jasmine, and a hint of something bitter. You smooth your powdered wig and fasten a cameo to your throat. And then comes the real armor, the face paint. Your lid-based ceruse paste soft, like whipped butter goes on in strokes. It covers blemishes, it hides shadows, and it delivers poison straight through your pores. Your rouge imported from Italy is mixed with mercuric sulfide. That lovely flush, it's slowly destroying your nervous system. But what are tremors and headaches when the alternative is being forgotten? You step out into the streets like a debutante entering a battlefield. Carriages roll past in a blur. You pass beggars and flower sellers toothless and barefoot, who sometimes mutter prayers when they see you. Some spit, some bow, most just stare. To them you are a painting beautiful, unreachable, and already cracking. You've earned a reputation. Men whisper your name at salons. Poets write sonnets that rhyme awkwardly with enchantress. A famous painter even asks to capture your likeness, though your first sitting ends early when you faint from the laudanum-laced tonic you took to calm your nerve. Historians still argue whether the courtesans of this era truly wielded power or whether they were simply better-dressed pawns. After all, you can reject a man's advances. But you can't reject poverty, or age, or illness creeping through your body like mold through silk. Tonight, you're invited to a masquerade at the home of the Comte de Laron. He's one of your regular patrons, old enough to be your grandfather and just petty enough to enjoy watching other men want what he already owns. The party is a swirl of sound violin strings, laughter, the dull clink of porcelain and teeth. You wear a dress so wide you can't fit through most doorways without turning sideways. It's robin's egg blue stiff with whalebone stitched with pearls. Your mask is silver filigree, but your real disguise is your poise. A rival enters just after you. She's taller, blonder, her gown is lemon yellow, and her gloves reach her shoulders. You both curtsy as if on cue, because in this room smiles are weapons and posture is survival. And you win. For now. The Comte takes your arm and leads you to a private parlor. You drink champagne from crystal glasses, the bubbles rising like false promises. He compliments your skin. You try not to laugh. If only he knew what's layered beneath the powder, the potions, the slow-acting curses of beauty. Quirky fact in 18th century Paris, wealthy women frequently carried vinaigrettes, small, ornate containers filled with sponges soaked in vinegar and herbs. Ostensibly used to revive themselves from fainting spells, they also mask the smell of decay, both literal and social. You keep one in your bodice now. Not for swooning, but because some nights, the stench of your own perfume-mixed sweat makes you dizzy. The human body was never designed to wear poisonous fashion. The Comte grows handsy. You play your part. You giggle when appropriate. You let his fingers graze the lace at your throat, but never the skin underneath. You've learned the dance well, how to maintain allure without surrendering completely. After all, a courtesan who's too available is soon discarded. And this city discards fast. Later that night, you lean over a balcony alone for a moment, watching Paris flicker beneath a velvet sky. Smoke curls from chimneys. A drunk stumbles into an alley. Somewhere, a cat howls. The air is cold, but your cheeks are fevered. You take a deep breath and cough. It's nothing you tell yourself. Just the powder, the weather, the night air. But deep down, you know it isn't. Your joints have begun to ache in the mornings. There's a tremor in your left hand that won't go away. And just yesterday, while brushing your hair, a small clump came loose in your palm. You stared at it for a full minute before sweeping it under the bed. Belvoir would say it's time to retire, to fade gracefully. But you're not ready to disappear. Not yet. Because disappearing means losing everything you fought for: the rooms, the gowns, the illusion of choice. You can't go back to mending linens and boiling water for someone else's supper. You've made your bed in silk, even if the silk is laced with arsenic. You step back inside, mask in hand, and smile as a noblewoman greets you with fake warmth and icy eyes. She comments on your complexion. So luminous, she says. You look like porcelain. And you do. Cracked, fragile, expensive. The gown you wear today is worth more than your mother's entire annual rent. It's sea foam green with silver embroidery, the fabric stiff and shimmering, imported from Lyon. 10 servants helped dress you this morning, 4 for the laces alone. You can't breathe, not figuratively. You genuinely cannot draw a full breath. Your corset is laced so tightly that you can feel your pulse thudding behind your ribs, like a trapped bird beating its wings against a cage. But when you step into the salon, heads turn. And that is the goal. The pain disappears sort of when the eyes fall on you, when they murmur your name, when they guess your origin. She must be Spanish, one whispers. No Greek. Look at those cheekbones. You're not from anywhere special. But mystery sells. Historians still argue whether courtesans truly dictated fashion or merely reflected it. In truth, it's a vicious loop. 1 week blue silk is in because a duchess wore it to the opera. The next, Every woman with aspirations or a rich sponsor is painted in it. And you must keep up. Because to fall behind in fashion is to vanish from the spotlight. And the spotlight is your only shield. This season's trend, gowns with metal thread embroidery. They shimmer beautifully under candlelight and tear your skin if you move wrong. But that's fashion. Beauty through suffering, or suffering disguised as beauty. Quirky fact: during the 18th century, women's skirts, especially among the elite and courtesans, grew so wide with hoops and padding that special sedan chairs had to be designed just to carry them through doors sideways. Today, you skip the sedan chair and take a hired coach instead. The ride is bumpy, jostling your corseted frame like a marionette in a box. You feel faint, but you hold your posture. You're meeting someone new. The Comte de Laron has arranged an introduction to a potential benefactor. That word sounds gentle, but it really means someone who pays in gold and expects your soul in return. The man is younger than you expect. Sharp cheekbones, a cleft chin, smells of bergamot and arrogance. A banker, apparently. Newly rich, eager to prove he belongs among the nobility. He studies you like you're a painting he's considering purchasing. You smile demurely and let him take your gloved hand. He doesn't kiss it. Interesting. He talks about horse breeding, about the current tensions in Versailles, about sugar prices. You nod and tilt your head just slightly. You've learned that this gesture, combined with your downcast lashes, makes men think you're listening. You're not. You're watching his hands, his shoes, the way his mouth moves. You're calculating how long will he last? How jealous is he likely to become? Does he strike women when drunk? The banker invites you to supper the next evening. You accept with the kind of smile you've perfected, bright, grateful, slightly flattered, and entirely hollow. That night, you remove your corset alone. It takes nearly 30 minutes and both hands shaking. Red welts rise along your ribs. One has split open slightly. You wipe the blood with rose water and dab it with powder. Always the powder. You eat a spoonful of bread soaked in broth. It's all you can manage. Your stomach is too compressed. You haven't had a full meal in days. Not because there's no food, but because being fashionable means being faint. You think of your mother sometimes. Her back hunched from years of laundry, her feet swollen, her laughter rare. You wanted to escape that life, and you did. But you wonder, did she at least get to breathe? Your body has begun to betray you in small ways. Bruises appear without explanation. Your gums are sensitive. You wake sometimes with night sweats gasping. The other courtesans notice. One mentions that so-and-so died last month. And it's a shame, really, she still had good teeth. You make a mental note to smile less, because teeth give everything away. You attend the supper. The banker is charming on the surface. His table is overloaded with meats, tarts, candied fruits. You take one fig chew slowly and excuse yourself midway through the third course with a headache. He doesn't press. Yet. You know how this works. The gifts will come next. Jewelry, a miniature portrait, promises. Then one night, you'll press too far. They always do. And you'll decide whether the trade is worth continuing or whether it's time to vanish from his life, with only a thank you note and a perfume-scented ribbon left behind. There's no such thing as retirement in your world. Only disappearance. Some girls find religion. Others marry rich and pray he never finds out their past. A few just stop being seen still in Paris, but living shadows haunting markets and cheap boarding houses. You vow not to become one of them. But vows are fragile things in a city like this. You look at your reflection again that night. The lines near your eyes are more visible despite the paste. Your skin is paler than before, and not in the fashionable way. You lean in close. The pupil in your left eye is still too dilated from the belladonna you used earlier. You whisper, "Just a little longer," because you're almost someone. And almost is better than nothing. Section 5. A love letter arrives tied in a blue ribbon, sealed with wax, stamped in the shape of a lion's paw. You open it slowly, fingers trembling more than usual. Inside is poetry, bad poetry, but the effort is there. To my dearest flame it begins, whose beauty burns through my soul like a comet across the night sky. You roll your eyes, but you keep the letter. Because in Paris, even the worst sonnet can be traded for something useful, a favor, an introduction, a little leverage. The man who wrote it is a Viscount. He smells like lavender and old parchment, and has a habit of leaning too close when he speaks. But he gives generously. One time you mentioned liking citrus marmalade, and 3 jars from Naples arrived at your door the next day. You never eat them. Your stomach can't handle it anymore. But the gesture mattered. This, you've come to understand, is the closest thing to love you'll ever be offered. Your heart doesn't flutter anymore. It calculates. Historians still argue whether courtesans truly engaged in romantic love, or whether love became just another currency to be traded and withheld. Maybe it's both. You remember your first kiss, awkward, messy, behind the bakery, and realize it felt more real than any velvet-lined evening since. Still you pretend. Pretending is your greatest skill now. You write back to the Viscount. You use a quill with your initials carved into the side, a gift from a dying painter once besotted with you. Your reply is careful, charming, but reserved. You dangle affection like a chandelier yesterday. That afternoon, a physician visits, sent by one of your more concerned patrons. You welcome him with a nod and a faint smile, but inside you're panicking. You know what he'll find. Your gums are swollen, your joints ache. There's a rash on your inner arm that no amount of powder can conceal. The physician pokes, prods, frowns. He makes a noise like a pigeon choking on a seed. Laudanum, he says, scribbling something. Take it for sleep, and perhaps less powder. Your skin is sensitive. You smile politely, and you don't follow his advice, because no one pays to see a woman without her powder. You return to the mirror, apply a fresh layer of rouge blended with mercury and crushed cochineal insects. Your cheeks blossom with unnatural health. Your lips redden into an illusion of vitality. You look perfect. You feel rotten. Quirky fact in 18th century France, syphilis was so common among elites and courtesans that symptoms like hair loss, blindness, or deformities were simply managed with wigs, veils, or fashion adjustments. A pale complexion was a warning sign, but also a compliment. You've seen it in others. One of your friends, Celestine, hasn't left her room in days. You send her a note with some oranges. She replies, barely legible teeth falling out. That's all. You whisper a prayer. Not for her, for yourself. Because she's a reminder. The Viscount sends another letter. This time there's a brooch tucked inside, shaped like a swan. You pin it to your bodice and wear it to the opera. You don't care much for music these days, but the opera house is where new patrons appear, scanning boxes with opera glasses in one hand and lust in the other. You sit with perfect posture, head tilted just enough to suggest mystery. Around you, Paris rustles, perfumed, powdered, and crumbling beneath the surface. And you, sitting still as a statue, are part of the show. Later that night, as you remove your gown and wash your face, you notice a strange pain in your left hip. Dull, constant, like a toothache lodged in bone. You swallow a dose of laudanum washed down with half a glass of wine. The pain recedes, but the fog remains. Your vision softens. The room spins gently. You crawl into bed, not bothering to remove the brooch. You dream of simpler things. A kitchen garden, clean water, air that doesn't smell like rotting roses. But when you wake, you're still in silk, still in Paris, still a courtesan. And you're starting to forget who you were before. Your invitation to Versailles arrives folded in stiff ivory parchment edges, gilt wax seal thick as a thumbprint. It smells faintly of violets, expensive to see. You trace the letter in curving opulent, almost too elegant to be legible. You're not surprised. You've been working toward this for months, even if you pretended not to care. Versailles is the summit, the stage upon which only the most polished women are allowed to perform. And you're ready. Or so you think. The journey there is long and nauseating. The coach bounces over ruts in the road, each jolt a reminder of your corset's tyranny. You smile anyway, because you're sharing the ride with a minor noble. And two other women like you, each playing the same unspoken game of who's most desirable, most composed, most likely to leave with a patron, and not a bruise. Versailles glows at dusk, not with warmth, but with artifice. Gilded gates, endless corridors, mirrors taller than trees. You step through rooms so lavish that you feel like a smudge just by breathing on them. The men here are different, more dangerous. Not because they're crueler, but because they're practiced. They've watched courtesans rise and fall like the tide. You're just another sparkle in their champagne. You are seated next to the Comte de Rochefort, a man whose nickname is the Surgeon, not because he's ever practiced medicine, but because of the way he dissects reputations. He asks your name, though you're sure he already knows it. You tell him anyway, voice smooth as velvet dipped in mercy. Historians still argue whether Versailles empowered women like you with access to power, or whether it simply offered a more gilded form of servitude. You begin to understand it's both. You are allowed here, but not embraced. You are admired, but never trusted. You are a guest, but you are not one of them, and you never will be. Later that evening, you walk the hall of mirrors alone. Your reflection repeats 1,000 times in candlelit silence. Your face powdered perfect stares back at you from every angle, a chorus of porcelain ghosts. Quirky fact, many courtesans used to carry small glass vials of crushed pearls dissolved in vinegar, which they drank in tiny sips to nourish beauty from within. Unsurprisingly, it led to chronic stomach ulcers and eventually organ failure. But at least their skin glowed for a time. Your skin is glowing tonight, but you've also vomited blood twice this week. You say nothing. Not to your patron, not to the other women, not even to yourself. Pain is just another accessory now. You return to Paris with gifts, a string of sapphires, a bottle of perfume too expensive to open a rumor about you and a prince you've never met. The rumor helps more than the perfume ever will. At home, you find a note slipped under your door. Celestine is dead. You sit down slowly, legs folding like paper. The room is too quiet. You stare at your reflection in the window, still powdered, still perfect. You knew it was coming. Her eyes had gone gray weeks ago. Her teeth had darkened. The mercury took her fast. Or maybe it was heartbreak. She never said. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just sit there and think, I need to order more rouge. Because the next party is tomorrow. And the banker will be there. And the Viscount. And maybe someone new. And they will want you to sparkle. So you will. Even if the sparkle is coming from inside your bones. You arrive at the masked ball 3 hours late on purpose. In Paris, arriving early means you're eager. Arriving late means you're expected. The ballroom is heavy with candle smoke and clashing perfume. Music swells from the far end, a string quartet playing something frivolous and forgettable. The chandelier above you sparkles like it's made of frozen tears. Every face is hidden behind a mask, but you know who they are. You always know. Your gown tonight is crimson velvet trimmed with black lace. It's meant to signal danger, mystery, allure. You're told it flatters your figure, though you can't feel much of anything below your ribcage. The corset is tighter than ever. You move with precision like a marionette with her own invisible string. Every gesture, every glance, every breath is performance. You make them want you, and yet you're fading. The bruises on your thighs haven't healed. Your fingers tremble when you reach for a champagne glass. There's a ringing in your ears that hasn't stopped for days. You press forward anyway. Tonight, you dance with the banker. He smells like money and powdered sugar. He makes a joke about your mysterious mask. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's required. He's not your favorite. He's possessive and growing more so. But he's also generous, and that keeps the laudanum bottle full and the apothecary from asking too many questions. Historians still debate whether women like you truly chose this life. Whether luxury is freedom, if that luxury demands the slow erasure of self. You know your answer, but you'd never say it aloud. Admitting regret is dangerous. It makes people uncomfortable. And in your world, being inconvenient is a death sentence faster than poison. At the edge of the ballroom, you see a young girl, 16 maybe. Pale, wide-eyed, clearly new. You remember being her. She's watching you. Not with admiration, but with calculation. She wants your place, your patron, your perfume, your power. Quirky facts inspiring courtesans in 8th century Paris would slip tiny bits of crushed diamonds into drinks to impress or seduce patrons, despite knowing the shards could tear their insides apart. Beauty, it seems, was always worth the gamble. You catch the girl's eye and smile not warmly, but politely. She lowers her gaze. You continue dancing. The night drags. Your joints ache. Your breath shortens. At one point you excuse yourself and collapse onto a velvet chaise in a quiet hallway, fingers pressed to your temples. The ringing is louder now. Your skin feels too tight. A footman walks past. He doesn't see you. No one sees you unless you want them to. That's the irony of your life. You are both spectacle and shadow, desired and disposable. A dream sold in pieces like lace by the yard. Back at home, you soak in a tub of lukewarm water, hoping it will ease the pain in your back. You stare at the ceiling. Your hair floats around you like seaweed. For a moment, you imagine slipping beneath the surface, letting the weight go, the powder melt off, the lashes fall away. But instead, you rise. Because tomorrow is another invitation, another letter, another patron, another mask. You towel off carefully, avoiding the sore spot on your hip where the rash has spread. You dab perfume behind your ears. You brush your wig and set it near the window. You open your diary, one of your few secrets, and write only one sentence. I am vanishing very beautifully. And you are. You start using more perfume than before, not to allure, but to hide. The decay once hidden now lingers just beneath the surface. Your breath tastes metallic. Your mouth is dry, even when you drink. The scent of your own skin turns sour by midday, no matter how many lavender sachets you press against your underarms. So you mask it, heavily. You blend rose oil musk and tinctures of clove and orange blossom. But underneath it all is the unmistakable trace of something dying slowly. And you know it's not just the perfume turning. Still, you step into your carriage like nothing's wrong. Tonight's engagement is at a salon in Saint-Germain, hosted by the Duchesse de Vallière, a woman whose power is measured by who she excludes. You received an invitation only after 3 months of subtle hinting 2 gifts and 1 well-timed encounter at the opera. The salon is gold and candlelit, full of voices that sound like velvet and conversations that drip with innuendo. The Duchess's dog wears a necklace worth more than your apartment. Her husband drinks quietly in the corner, irrelevant. You float through the crowd with grace. No one sees the stiffness in your gait, the faint wince when someone brushes your arm, the way your shoulder twitches slightly every few minutes. Someone compliments your perfume. You smile. Thank you say. It's a Parisian blend, very rare. You don't say what's really rare that you're still standing. Historians still argue whether the perfumed air of 8th century France was a symbol of culture or a desperate reaction to the filth that festered just beneath. Some believe courtesans were the first to perfect scent layering. Others say it was the only way to survive when rot was everywhere, including within. The evening progresses. You sip watered wine. You laugh when prompted. You drop a gloved hand onto a duke's arm and pretend not to notice his wife watching. You are magnificent. Until you aren't. The fever hits suddenly. Your spine chills, but your cheeks burning. You excuse yourself smiling faintly and find a hallway with a cracked mirror at its end. You study your reflection. Your face is pale beneath the rouge. The swelling in your gums has returned. You open your vinaigrette, a tiny ornate box, and breathe in the vinegar-soaked sponge. The sharpness helps. Temporarily. Quirky fact. Some courtesans carried hollow rings filled with scented herbs, or crushed camphor to sniff, and overwhelmed by illness with the smell of others. It was discreet, elegant even, and completely necessary. You reach for your fan, but your fingers twitch too much. It slips and clatters to the floor. You don't bend down to pick it up. You can't. Later in the carriage home, you keep your head pressed against the window. The city outside is buzzing wet with fog and lamplight. Somewhere someone is laughing, truly laughing. You try to remember the last time you did that without calculation. You fail. At home, your maid draws a bath and lays out clean linen. You wave her away. You strip down slowly, every motion revealing another mark. A bruise on your hip. A burn near your collarbone from a curling iron too hot. Scabs beneath your wig line. You slide into bed fully clothed. You're too tired to remove your dress. The sapphire brooch presses into your side, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that tomorrow you must be radiant again. Because if you aren't, they'll stop inviting you. And once the invitations stop, the disappearances begin. You close your eyes. You whisper a name your own before all this began. But it sounds foreign now. You've become a legend wrapped in lace. And legends don't get to be human. Your dress today is forest green, trimmed with ivory lace, dyed with arsenic, though no one says it out loud. It's the fashionable shade this season. Everyone's wearing it. Everyone's coughing. You glide through the streets like mist. Men bow. Women glance, smile, and whisper, "You're still someone." That matters more than comfort and truth and health, and certainly more than breath. But inside your lungs feel heavy. You wheeze at night now, each inhale whistling faintly like a kettle just before the boil. You stop singing. You used to hum in the bath. Now silence feels safer. At the jeweler's, a new client, a baron with pale fingers and too much cologne, picks out a necklace for you. Diamonds, sharp and bright. You smile, though it feels like your cheeks are cracking. He asks how you stay so radiant. You laugh softly and lie, "Good sleep and good soup." He believes you. They always do. Historians still argue whether these men truly loved the courtesans they adorned, or simply loved the illusion they paid for. Some letters survived flowery, obsessed, pathetic. Some left estates to their mistresses. Others left nothing but debts. You never expect much. That's how you've survived this long. Back at your apartment, you find a note from your laundress. It's wrapped around a small box of herbal tonics. From my grandmother's recipe, she writes. For your nerves. You almost cry, but don't. Tears ruin powder. Instead, you steep the herb sip and pretend it helps. But your body betrays you by morning. You vomit until your stomach cramps. You try to stand and black out instead. When you wake, your maid is dabbing your forehead with rose water. She's trembling. You were burning, she whispers. You called out for someone. You don't remember who or what you said. Quirky fact. In 18th century France, some aristocratic women and courtesans, by imitation, used to tape raw meat beneath their gowns to keep their skin cool and firm during long balls. The meat, of course, rotted quickly, causing infections and unbearable smells, masked only by layers of perfume. You consider it absurd until you realize it's not much different from what you do now. At the next gathering, you wear the diamond necklace and nothing more around your throat. Your dress dips low, revealing a neckline powdered to perfection, hiding the rash spreading beneath. You still dazzle. The banker's jealous. The viscount's drunk. The young poet writes you a new stanza on a napkin and asks to read it to you in private. You let him. He cries halfway through. You offer no comfort. You leave with a count who doesn't ask questions. That's his charm. In his carriage, you shiver. He wraps a shawl around you. It's silk and too warm. You press your fingers into your temples. The pain is blooming again. He mistakes it for modesty. Back home, your maid helps you undress. You're too dizzy to do it alone. She gasps when she sees your back angry welts with a corset rubbed raw. I'll burn it, she mutters. You shake your head. You need it. To be seen. To be someone. Even if that someone is falling apart. You sit before the mirror staring. Your reflection is still beautiful. And that's the worst part. The apothecary sees you without an appointment. That's how you know it's bad. You arrive cloaked, face shaded by a wide-brimmed hat, gloved fingers clutching the doorframe as though the wood itself might save you. He doesn't ask questions, he's seen the signs before. Courtesans always show up like this beautiful, desperate unraveling. He examines you quietly, tongue pale, pulse weak, rash worsening. You sit still, legs trembling beneath your skirts as he pokes at your ribs and scribbles in his little book. Finally, he sighs. Bleeding might help, he offers, like suggesting a change in perfume. You nod. He leeches your arms. He drains a vial of blood and tosses it away like spoiled wine. Then he offers tonics laudanum for pain, a bitter syrup to stimulate the humor, and a paste made of honey and ground bone for your gums. None of it will work. You both know that. But it gives you a few more days of illusion. Historians still debate whether medical treatments for women in your position were genuine attempts at care or rituals designed to prolong profitability. Bleeding, blistering, purging. It was medicine by roulette. Sometimes it worked. Mostly it didn't. But appearances were everything, and death could be delayed, if not denied. You return home and sleep for 16 hours. When you wake, your maid is crying beside the bed. You say nothing. Your throat is too dry. The poet sends flowers. The viscount sends a note. Where were you last night? The duchess sends an invitation. A spring soiree, don't be late. You go. Of course you go. You wear a blue satin dress this time. High neck to hide the bruising. The sleeves are long and stifling. You powder your face even though the skin beneath it feels hot and thin, like paper left near a flame. You smile. You sit. You pose. Quirky fact. In Versailles and the wealthier salons of Paris, it was common for hosts to provide health cushions, little pillows scented with dried herbs that guests could hold discreetly in their laps to stave off fainting or nausea. You once thought them silly. Now you grip one like a lifeline. The Duchess compliments your grace. The banker stares at your hands. They're shaking just a little. You cross your arms. There's a new girl at the party. She's barely old enough to need rouge. Her teeth are perfect. She smells like lemon and soap. She is radiant in a way only the untouched can be. She watches you with open admiration. You want to tell her to run. Instead, you teach her how to angle her fan, how to exit a room slowly enough to be noticed, but fast enough to keep mystery, how to wear rouge on the inside of the lips so it lasts longer than speaking. She listens closely. You feel like a ghost giving advice to the living. When you get home, you bleed again. You bleed, this time from the gums. You rinse your mouth with wine and wait for the spinning in your head to stop. It doesn't. You wonder, is this the moment it turns? It isn't. Not yet. You press your fingers to your temples and whisper, "Not tonight." Because you still have things to wear. People to dazzle. Lies to tell. You sleep sitting up. Lying down makes the coughing worse. In the dark, you hear the city pulsing, Paris alive, indifferent glittering, and you have flickered in its chandelier. You don't leave your room for 3 days. Not because you can't, but because if you do, someone will see you like this pale as bone dust, breath wheezing like a tired accordion, lips split at the corners from too much rouge and too little nourishment. Your maid brings broth. You sip it slowly, eyes unfocused, counting the threads in the blanket pulled over your legs. Somewhere outside Paris buzzes on. Carts clatter. A neighbor sings off-key. The bells of Saint-Eustache toll mid-morning, then mid-afternoon, then dusk. You measure the day in chimes and coughs. When you finally rise, it's not because you're better. It's because you're afraid they'll forget you. Disappearance is death long before the body stops working. So you stand. You reapply powder thick this time. Your skin flakes beneath it, but the mask holds. You layer perfume like lacquer. You pin your wig so tight it hides the patches of scalp now bare. You look at yourself. You are beautiful, and you are rotting. Historians still argue how long courtesans lasted at the height of their profession. Some say 5 years. Some say 10 if they were clever. But even the cleverest eventually did. The game was never built for endurance. You venture out just to the promenade. You wear a veil more for yourself than others. Your joints ache. Your feet barely lift from the cobblestones. Still, a gentleman tips his hat. You smile faintly and nod. Victory, however small. When you return, your breath is shallow, your chest tight. You collapse into a chair, heart hammering like it's trying to escape. A letter waits on the table. The wax seal is familiar. The Viscount. You don't open it. Not yet. You stare at it for an hour. Eventually, you tear it open with trembling fingers. He writes, "I've heard whispers. Say it isn't true. You don't know what he's heard. That you're ill, that you fainted last week, that someone saw you coughing blood behind a curtain at the Duchess's soiree. All of them probably. You dip a quill in ink and write back, don't believe gossip. I am still quite radiant. Lie. Always lie." Quirky fact, some courtesans commissioned false medical certificates from friendly physicians to prove they were clean, free of disease, free of madness. These papers were as important as any love letter. In fact, more so. You think about asking your apothecary for wine. You don't. It's too late. That night, the fever returns. You sweat through your sheets. You mutter nonsense in your sleep. Your maid cries again, wiping your face with lavender water. She tries to undress you gently. You stop her. And still wails. You whisper voice, hoarse but firm. You just need rest. You don't rest. You lie awake, eyes wide, counting each breath like it's borrowed. Outside, Paris glitters. Inside, you fade. The mirror across the room catches the light. And for a moment, you see not yourself, but a memory. A girl, just beginning. Bright-eyed, unbroken, unpoisoned. The house is quieter now. Visitors have slowed. Letters come less often. The banker hasn't sent for you in weeks. The Viscount wrote again, but his tone was clipped like someone signing the final page of a contract they regret ever drafting. You've become what all courtesans fear, a whisper, a shadow at the edge of someone else's memory. You sit by the window, watching the fog roll over the sand. You used to walk by the river, arm in arm with admirers. Now even the thought of descending stairs makes your lungs tighten. Your maid suggests you see a priest. You laugh weakly, but you laugh. You think I'll confess powdered sins, you say. You wouldn't understand the rouge codes. She doesn't press. She just brews more tea. You look at your hands, once admired now, veined and stiff. Rings still adorn your fingers, but the skin beneath is pale and wrinkled like soft fruit left in the sun too long. One of your fingernails has turned black. You paint over it. Historians still argue whether the decline of a courtesan was public or private. The truth is both. You disappear gradually, first from parties, then from portraits, and finally from conversation. But you still exist just behind the curtain, still powdered, still waiting. One night, a knock comes. You answer it yourself. It's the young poet. He stands awkwardly holding a wrapped bundle of violets and a letter. I wanted to say, you cut him off with a smile. Still radiant, you say. He nods. You both pretend. He doesn't come in. You don't invite him. Quirky fact, in the final years of their lives, many former courtesans turn to writing memoirs, not for vanity, but to reclaim the narrative. One such memoir, Les Confidences d'une Courtisane, was a scandalous bestseller. Though scholars now debate how much was truth and how much was crafted mythology. You thought of writing one yourself. You even began 3 pages of elegant prose and half-truths. But the pen grew too heavy and the mirror too honest. Now even your script betrays you. Your hands cramp, your letters wobble. The ink smudges with the slightest tremor. You've taken to lighting fewer candles. Too much light makes it harder to pretend. You sleep more. Not deeply, never deeply, but often. The days blur. You wake unsure of the hour. You dress slowly, not always full. Sometimes your maid finds you still in bed at noon, wig tilted, rouge smudged. But you never let her wash your face. Let them see the lie to the very end. A new courtesan is rising now. Her name is Delphine. She's blonde, barely 20, with a laugh like champagne and teeth that still belong to youth. You remember her from the Duchess's spring soiree. She reminds you of you. She wears the same perfume you once favored, walks with a similar sway. She's even taken to using violet patches on her temples like you did in your peak season. Imitation, they say, is flattery. You feel it as a funeral. And yet you send her a gift, a silk fan delicately painted with sparrows and vines. No note, no signature. Just a token from a disappearing ghost to the newest apparition. You watch her at a distance now. She doesn't see you, They never do. You stop wearing corsets. Not out of rebellion, but because your ribs can't take it anymore. They press too hard on your lungs. Even a shallow breath feels like inhaling through silk soaked in water. So now beneath your gowns, you wear soft underlayers, loose, warm, and utterly improper. But no one notices. No one looks that closely anymore. Your most frequent companion now is the maid. Her name is Elise. She's barely older than you were when you first powdered your face. At night, she sits by your bed and reads from novels romances, mostly what you tolerate. Sometimes you ask her to read the same paragraph twice. Not because you didn't understand it, but because it reminds you of something you've forgotten what it felt like to believe love was real. Elise lights fewer candles each evening. She knows now. That brightness only highlights the hollows beneath your eyes and a slight tremble in your lips. Better to let the room fade softly with the sky. Letters still come, but fewer now. The banker has stopped altogether. The Viscount sent one final note. I will remember you as you were. You burned it. You don't want to be remembered as anything. Not an ornament. Not a cautionary tale. Not even a ghost. Historians still argue over whether courtesans had agency in their decline, or whether they were simply discarded when their shine wore off. The truth, you gave everything. Your body, your nights, your silence. And the only thing you ever kept was your name, and even that began to feel hollow. You try writing again. The ink blots too easily. Your hand cramps. But you manage a few lines. Not poetry. Not confession. Just, this is not a tragedy. It is a transaction. You sit by the window and stare at the rooftops of Paris, smoke rising with lazy curls. Once that view thrilled you. Now it just looks cold. Quirky fact. As some courtesans aged and lost favor, they turned to discreet boarding houses run by former courtesans themselves, where powder was optional and silence was guaranteed. They called them maisons de repos, but most simply called them the end of the road. You've been invited to one. The Duchess surprisingly sent the card herself. You haven't answered yet. You know what it means. To go there is to step off the stage. No more invitations, no more gowns, no more pretending. You wonder if your name will still matter once you're gone. You ask Elise quietly, do you think they'll talk about me? She hesitates. I think some already do, she says. But they don't know the real you. You smile, a soft one, not the painted kind. That's the point, you whisper. That night a chill settles deep in your bones. You light a single candle and sit before your mirror. No powder, no rouge, no wig, just your face. It looks tired. It looks like someone who's nearly finished. And somehow that feels right. You extinguish the flame. The cough returns with force. It begins a dawn, sharp, dry tearing. You clutch your chest, eyes watering, and for a few terrifying seconds, you can't breathe at all. Elise rushes in her face, pale with panic, a damp cloth in one hand and the laudanum bottle in the other. You wave the bottle away, not because you're brave, just because you're tired. That evening, you remain in bed. You no longer pretend to be recovering. The mirror goes untouched. The gowns stay hung. The brush gathers dust. Your perfume, once so precious, sits uncorked, its fragrance beginning to turn. You can't remember the last time you left the house. The city no longer calls to you. The streets that once carried your name now carry someone else's. Delphine, probably. Or Isabel. The next name in the cycle of silk and ruin. Historians still argue whether courtesans died alone, whether they were abandoned by lovers, or if at least one wept at the bedside. Some left estates, Some were buried in unmarked graves. Some were simply forgotten like songs that fall out of fashion. You know which one will be. The small procession still visits. An old patron sends a scarf. Another delivers pastries sweet, but they make you nauseous. A poet writes again this time, unsure if you'll answer. You don't. What is there to say? Elise changes your sheets daily now. She reads you stories in the evenings, no longer romances, but quiet tales of country gardens, of sleepy towns, where no one wears powder and time moves like honey. You close your eyes and imagine it, a field of lavender, a cup of milk, a name no one knows. You begin to fade in pieces. One day your voice, the next your appetite, then your ability to sit up without help. Quirky fact, some dying courtesans would request one final portrait, a soft sketch, no powder, no pose. Not for patrons, not for newspapers, just for themselves. Most never live to see it finished. You think about that. You wonder what you would look like now, unmasked, unlit. Would the artist find tragedy in your bones, or just another face marked by Paris and Elise brings you a mirror one morning? You shake your head. No more of that, you rasp. She nods. Instead, she brings flowers. Lilies this time. You don't love them, but they smell clean, earthy. That night, you wake in darkness. A coffin, no fever, just stillness. The candle by your bedside has burned low. Elise is asleep in a chair folded open in her lap. You watch her for a while. You try to remember your mother's voice, your real name, the feel of cobblestones under bare feet. They're blurry now, edges smudged like damp ink. You smile, because you realize something important. You are no longer waiting to be seen. You're just here, alive, for now. And that is enough. Morning arrives softly, almost calmly. Birdsong filters through the window, and for a moment you imagine you're in the countryside. Not Paris, not the city of perfume and poison, just some nameless village where the air smells of earth and wood smoke, not lead and laudanum. You blink slowly. The sunlight touches your hands, thin now, translucent, almost like pressed petals. Elise brings tea. You can no longer hold the cup. She lifts it to your lips, and you sip grateful for the warmth, the normalcy. Better, she asks. You nod, though. You don't mean it. You've stopped meaning it for days now. There are no more letters, no more invitations, no more knockings at your door from velvet-gloved messengers or perfumed rivals whispering poison behind fans. Paris has forgotten you. And somehow it feels like freedom. You no longer paint your face, no longer bind your body, no longer speak in flirtation or calculation. You have unlearned the pose, the lean, subtle lift of a brow that once turned men into statues. Now you are only breath, and breath is precious. Elise reads again. A simple story. A baker, a cat, a child who wants to learn to sing. You let the words roll over you like warm milk. You drift not into sleep, but something softer. Historians still debate whether the lives of courtesans were stories of survival or sacrifice, whether they were symbols of power or victims of performance. But history never truly remembers the soft parts, the private evenings, the quiet sips of broth the last time someone brushed your hair simply because you asked. You ask Elise to do that now. She smiles through tears and brushes gently your hair thinner than thread. She hums something, an old lullaby maybe. You don't recognize it. You don't need to. Quirky fact, some courtesans left behind lockets filled not with jewels or secrets, but with a strand of their own hair. A final offering to a world that once devoured their beauty. You think about leaving something behind. A note, a phrase, a truth. But instead, you ask Elise to open the window. Air flows in. It's cold and clean. You close your eyes and smile. "I think I'm ready," you whisper. Elise doesn't ask for what. She just holds your hand. And now, as your breath softens, let the city fade. Let the rustle of silk and whispers of salons quiet to a hush. Let the footsteps retreat down, echoing marble hallways. Let the flicker of candlelight dissolve into darkness. You've danced your final waltz, worn every color of the season, spoken in riddles survived in powder. You've played your role so well that even history forgot where the performance ended and the person began. But here, in this final hush, there's no need to perform. No need for rouge or laughter on command, or letters inked with lies. Here, there is only you, whole, unmasked, and weightless. So breathe out slowly. Feel the warmth of the blanket, the softness of memory pressing gently against your chest. The perfume has faded now. The jewels are tucked away. And the noise, that eternal Parisian hum, is just a far-off murmur. You are no longer desired. You are no longer watched. You are no longer vanishing. You are resting. Let that thought cradle you like the silk sheets once did. Let the sound of the wind through the shutters lull your mind toward stillness, toward quiet, toward sleep. You are safe now. Sleep well, my darling phantom of Paris. Sweet dreams. We're returning to the velvet shadows of 18th century Paris, not to follow the story of a single woman, but to explore how an entire society built itself around women it refused to acknowledge. You are one of them, a courtesan, a companion, a secret, a scandal. In salons, you are a sensation. In the street, you are invisible. You're the whispered name behind closed doors, and the silence that falls when those doors open. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, let me know your location and local time. I love seeing where the quiet stories find their homes. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. They applaud you behind curtains. They toast to you in poems and raise glasses to your name at masquerades. They let you speak in candlelit corners, let you laugh into their cravats, let you guide their hands across maps of pleasure and power. But when morning comes, they walk 6 paces ahead of you on the street, because you are both treasure and threat. In private, your voice is sweet music. In public, it's a danger to their legacy. You dine in the finest apartments in the Faubourg Saint-Germain, but you exit through the servant's door. You attend the opera in a private box, but only under another woman's name. You wear diamonds gifted by dukes who would deny you in front of their sons. Historians still debate whether this double life gave courtesans power or imprisoned them in a velvet cage. But from your seat corseted and observant, the answer is simple. You are welcome, but never wanted. Your role is not to be seen. It is to be shown. Your clients, those men who sip from your palm and borrow your wit, would write you into sonnets, but never their family trees. They compare you to goddesses in Rome, then cross themselves, as if that makes it better. You are the applause between acts, never the name on the marquee, and yet you are everywhere. Your fashion is copied. Your turns of phrase echoed in noble salons. You host philosophers and princes, and your opinions pass uncredited into the mouths of men who publish them as original thought. You are Paris's muse, and its most beautiful erasure. Quirky fact courtesans often inspired fashion trends before noblewomen dared try them, new wig styles, daring necklines, even certain shades of rouge. If a courtesan wore it on Tuesday, a duchess would wear it on Sunday, but you get no credit, only caution. Because when your name is spoken too often, they stop inviting you. And when it's not spoken at all, you've already been erased. So you stay just visible enough to sparkle. and invisible enough to survive, you are useful. And in Paris, being useful is the closest thing to safety a woman like you can afford. No one says it aloud, of course. No one thanks you for preventing a scandal or calming a nervous minister before he faces the king. But they keep you close in secret apartments and quiet parlors because you serve a function no law can admit and no etiquette book will name. You're not just there to be adored. You're there to absorb. Secrets, confessions, frustrations. Sometimes entire political strategies disguised as pillow talk. You pour the wine. You play the fool. But your memory is perfect. And that makes you dangerous. Historians still argue whether courtesans were truly powerless. You know better. You've seen a single phrase whispered from your lips ruin a marriage. A sigh in the right ear has stalled duels, secured appointments, even shaped legislation. But power in your hands is only temporary. Borrowed, fragile. You are a tool, sharp, polished, and elegant. The tools are put away once the task is done. Tonight, a nobleman visits. He's nervous. His coat is fine, but there's a tremble in his fingers. He speaks of a mistress he can't afford and a gambling debt he swears isn't his fault. You offer no solutions, just soft eyes and the illusion of understanding. When he leaves, he kisses your wrist, as if it blesses him. But no one will speak of it tomorrow. You host a small gathering later that week. Artists, minor aristocrats, a woman who used to be called beautiful more often than she is now. You light the lamps, pour the drinks, and let others shine. That's your magic. You are a stage they don't even know they're standing on. Quirky fact, in 18th century France, many men relied on courtesans not only for affection, but also as informal advisors. Some considered them more reliable than ministers. After all, you already knew how to listen without being seen. But society never lets you rise too far. You may be the reason two dukes don't draw swords at a ball. But if your name appears in gossip, you're the distraction, never the diplomat. So you learn restraint. You speak less, smile more. You become quiet enough to hear the power shift in a single sentence. Because your survival depends on it. And Paris is never quiet for long. You are being watched, not just by lovers and rivals, but by the city itself. Paris sees you silently and with intent. Somewhere in a stone-walled office, an official with ink-stained fingers writes your name into a ledger. Your address, your associates, your rumored entanglements, perhaps even your illnesses. You are not a citizen. You are a category. There is no trial, no letter, no announcement. Just a quiet shifting of status. Now you are known. Not criminal, not free, simply noted. Historians still argue whether these registries existed for protection or surveillance. Some call it order, others call it control. You call it a promise. You are visible only when it benefits them. The police inspector doesn't knock. He sends a note requesting a conversation. You arrive at dusk, dressed modestly, veil drawn low. You sit on a hard-backed chair while he glances at your file like a butcher reading recipes. He asks, "Do you know the banker's recent associates? Have you spoken to anyone connected to the Spanish ambassador? Has the Duchess, your occasional patron, mentioned any upcoming travel?" You smile faintly. You've done this before. You give him just enough. And in return, he does not make things harder for you. Because in Paris, protection is a negotiation, not a right. Quirky fact, some Parisian courtesans were quietly used as informants by the monarchy, especially during times of diplomatic tension. Their proximity to nobility gave them access. Their silence gave them value. But they were never paid fairly, and always discarded when war turned real. Later that evening, you write a letter. Not to a lover, but to a fellow courtesan. You warn her about the inspector's tone, about the questions. You don't trust the mail, so you fold it into a fan, tie it with silk, and send it with a trusted maid. She'll understand. In your world, survival is collective, but the police don't think of you as a network. They think of you as isolated flames, manageable, contained. They don't realize you whisper in each other's shadows. Back at home, you change into your gown for supper. Your hand trembles slightly as you button the back. Another late dinner, another powerful man expecting softness and secrets. You take one last look in the mirror. You are beautiful. You are dangerous. You are recorded, but not remembered. Not yet. The church tells you you're a sinner, and yet they never stop saying why. You hear sermons from the pulpit condemning vanity, lust, and unnatural beauty. Words that describe you down to the rouge on your lips. And when the priest's voice rises in moral fury, the women in the pews glance sideways, not at him, but at you. You sit still. You bow your head. You wear gloves so fine they might have been stitched by angels. And afterward, the priest sends a gift to your apartment. A prayer card, a bottle of sherry. A note that says, you are not beyond redemption. He signs it with trembling penmanship and a scent of incense and cowardice. Historians still debate the Catholic Church's double stance on courtesans vilified in doctrine, welcomed in confessionals, tolerated in confessionally Catholic states. The truth is simpler. You were always too useful to purge completely. You ease guilty consciences. You soothe anxious nobility. You inspire men who then write essays about your corruption. One bishop even published a tract warning against painted women while keeping 3 of them in a house outside the city. He said he was converting them. You visited once. They seemed comfortable. The church doesn't fear your body. It fears your freedom. Because your beauty isn't for a husband. Your time isn't for children. And your loyalty isn't to God. It's to survival. Quirky fact, in 18th century France, some courtesans were buried in unmarked graves because the church refused last rites. Unless, of course, their patrons intervened, then a small donation to a local abbey could mysteriously absolve any sin. You've already told Elise, your maid, not to bother. Let the priests keep their candles. You'll light your own. You attend confession rarely. When you do, you say very little. Not because you have nothing to confess, but because there's no one inside that box who'd understand the truth. You don't need forgiveness. You need freedom. But Paris only offers one of those. And only if you smile. You pay. You always pay. For your dresses, your powdered wigs, your physician's silence, your maid's loyalty. But more than that, you pay the state. Quietly. Regularly. In coins wrapped in velvet and handed over without receipt. It's called a public appearance fee. It's not a law, but we'd best not ignore it. You walk through certain quartiers, like the Palais Royal or the arcades of Rue Saint-Honoré, and suddenly a clerk appears noting your presence. He smiles. You pay. No fuss. He doesn't say it aloud, but you understand your beauty is taxed. Your existence costs money, and yet you have no legal standing. You can't sue a patron for breaking promises. You can't inherit property left in your name unless the will is forged or the heir conveniently dies. You can't press charges if you're beaten or robbed. Not really. The law sees you but doesn't recognize you. You are a revenue stream, not a citizen. Historians still argue whether these fees were protection or punishment. Some say they were bribes disguised as bureaucracy. Others claim it was the price of peace. Let the courtesans work, but don't let them forget. They're still property. You walk the line every day. Too visible and you provoke scandal. Too discreet and you vanish. You remember Clarice? Beautiful. Clever. A patron of her own salon. She refused to pay the appearance fee for a month, said it was unjust. Next week, her rooms were raided. Her dresses confiscated. Her name removed from invitations. No one knows where she went after that. Quirky fact, in Paris during the 1760s, certain neighborhoods imposed informal taxes on women deemed of independent beauty, especially if they were seen walking alone or wearing too fine a fabric without a husband present. The receipts, when given, were marked with vague codes like for order and harmony. You once asked for a receipt. The official stared at you like you'd slapped him. Now you don't ask. You pay. You smile. You walk with poise through markets that would turn you away if you looked tired or old or weary. And when you're home again, coins, lighter cheeks, flushed pride, slightly thinner, you remind yourself you're not meant to be protected. You're meant to be profitable. Your rise is inevitable. So is your fall. At first, the ascent feels like a dream. Every door opens, every whisper becomes a compliment. Every glance turns into an invitation. The Duchess smiles at you. The banker calls you by a nickname only lovers dare use. You are the one to watch. But what they don't tell you is this: the moment they watch someone newer, you're already descending. You don't age, you expire. It begins subtly. A canceled invitation. A patron delays his visit. The jeweler takes longer to open the cabinet when you walk in. Your name slips from the salon host's tongue, replaced by Delphine, or Colette, or whichever girl now laughs the way you used to. Historians still argue whether courtesans were cast aside due to beauty fading or because they dared to age visibly in a world built on illusion. Either way, the punishment is the same science. You remember the first time it happened to someone else. Sabine, she once held the city's gaze like fire in a mirror. One day she showed up to a ball in the same gown as the Duchess's niece. That night, her patron vanished. The next week, her apartment was empty. Her maid crying on the steps. Her parrot still calling her name. You never asked where she went, because you already knew. Quirky fact: Parisian courtesans often retired not by choice, but by quiet exile, shuffled to the countryside under the guise of illness or spiritual retreat. Many were never seen again. A few reappeared as governesses, some as nothing at all. You try not to think about it, but you feel it. Your wrists are thinner than they used to be. Your rouge needs more layering. Your reflection, still dazzling, requires more candlelight than sunlight. At the last soirée, a younger girl sat beside your former patron. She laughed too loudly. You laughed louder. You smiled. You nodded. You said nothing. Because that's how the fall begins, with one quiet glance that doesn't land on you. And from that moment forward, you're not rising. You're managing your descent, with dignity, with grace, with silence, until even the silence forgets your name. You look in the mirror one final time, not for vanity, but for memory. Your face, still lovely in the right light, has changed. The lines near your mouth don't vanish with powder anymore. The redness in your eyes doesn't fade with cucumber slices. Your beauty has become heavy. Not gone, just harder to carry. And Paris doesn't carry anything for long. You've begun to notice how the world forgets you before you even leave it. The letters stopped last week. The banker's valet no longer tips his hat. Even your own name sounds distant when the lease says it like a story told in the wrong tense. You walk into the street and no one turns, not even to whisper, not even to smirk. You've passed into that strange realm where a courtesan is no longer scandalous, no longer seductive, just seen through like fog over river glass. Historians don't write about this stage. There are no paintings of your final years, no statues, no verses. Quirky fact: of the dozens of famous courtesans in pre-revolutionary France, fewer than 5 have detailed biographies. Most vanish from record the moment their patrons do. They are buried under different names, if they are buried at all. You once hosted men who influenced borders. Now your voice struggles to fill your room. You still own the silks, the fans, the jewelry, but they feel like costumes from a life no longer yours. Even Elise doesn't speak as much. She's kind still, but quieter, like she's afraid of waking from something that's already ended. You sit by the window and watch Paris move without you. The carriages pass. The bells chime. The girls laugh in the street below one of them wearing the hat you once started the trend for. She doesn't know it came from you. She doesn't need to. You are the scaffolding. You built the mirror. You were the blush in every cheek, the scent on every wrist, the shadow behind every glance. And yet you'll be a footnote at best. Maybe not even that, because history only remembers the men who named the stars, not the women who taught them how to look up.